In a not-so-distant future, humanity reached a significant milestone in space exploration. The Ares 3 mission was launched with great fanfare, and NASA was ready to uncover the mysteries of Mars. The rocket, imposing and illuminated by bright lights, soared into the sky, carrying with it a hand-picked team of astronauts, each representing the pinnacle of science and technology. Among them was Mark Watney, a botanist with an unparalleled passion for life and science. Since he was young, he had dreamed of being an explorer, and now he was finally about to fulfill that dream. As the spacecraft distanced itself from Earth, Mark looked out the window, admiring the blue beauty of the planet he was leaving behind. He was excited, but also aware of the responsibilities his team carried. The mission was not just an exploration, it was an opportunity to expand the horizons of humanity. The team consisted of 6 members: Melissa Lewis, the commander, known for her firm yet compassionate leadership; mechanical engineer Rick Martinez, always ready with a joke; navigation pilot Johanna, who had an impressive skill for maneuvers in zero gravity; and scientists Venkat Kapoor and Annie Montrose, who were dedicated to analyzing every aspect of the mission. Together, they formed a cohesive team, united by the desire to explore the unknown. After weeks of travel, Ares 3 finally arrived on Mars. The Martian atmosphere was different, a reddish hue contrasting with the darkness of space. Upon landing, the team felt adrenaline coursing through their veins. Each of them had a crucial role to play in the exploration of the planet. Mark, as a botanist, was tasked with studying the possibility of growing plants on Mars, a vital step for future colonies. The first week was filled with discoveries. The team collected soil samples, analyzed the atmosphere, and recorded valuable data. Mark was ecstatic. He spent hours in his makeshift lab, conducting experiments and dreaming of a future where life could thrive on Mars. However, the conditions on the planet were treacherous. The team knew they faced risks, but the opportunity to make history outweighed any fears. One day while they were working, a sandstorm began to form on the horizon. The team monitored the weather conditions, but the storm was approaching rapidly, more ferocious than any they had predicted. Communication with Earth was becoming unstable, and a sense of urgency filled the air. The storm soon turned into a hurricane of sand, forcing the team to make quick decisions. As the situation deteriorated, Melissa decided it was time to evacuate. They tried to rescue Mark, but amid the chaos, debris struck the spacecraft, injuring one of the team members and forcing them to leave Mars without him. As Ares 3 took off, Mark, who was out of sight, lost communication. He awoke, dazed, on the Martian surface, realizing he had been left behind. Solitude and uncertainty enveloped him, but there was one thing he knew: he had to survive. After the violent sandstorm, Mark Watney wakes up amidst the wreckage of the Ares 3 station. The first thing he notices is the dimness of the metal walls, illuminated only by a faint light. The silence is deafening. He tries to get up, but the pain in his body reminds him that he was injured during the storm. Mark quickly pulls himself together and assesses his situation. He finds the other crew members missing and communication with Earth cut off. The reality of what happened begins to sink in. He is alone on Mars, believed to be dead by his team and NASA. Knowing that his supplies are limited, Mark has to think quickly. He takes inventory of everything that is left: dehydrated food, water, and tools. With a nervous smile, he remembers his training in botany. If he can grow something, he might increase his chances of survival. He heads to the cultivation area, where he finds a small space that can be transformed into an improvised garden. With a bit of creativity and a lot of effort, he decides to plant potatoes, using the astronauts' waste as fertilizer. With a touch of humor, he records videos for his diary, sharing his experiences and keeping his spirits high. During the following days, Mark documents his routine. He talks about his challenges, frustrations, and small victories. Loneliness becomes his constant companion, but he finds solace in his records. The videos become a way to connect with the world he left behind, even though communication is still impossible. He also dedicates himself to maintaining his water supplies, creating a system to extract moisture from the soil, and using what he has available. Each small achievement turns into a private celebration, and he learns to appreciate every moment, even while alone on a red planet. As days turn into weeks, loneliness begins to weigh heavily. Mark struggles with missing his teammates and life on Earth. He distracts himself by watching old movies and listening to music that transports him back home. However, the reality of his situation becomes increasingly clear. He needs to find a way to be rescued. With the determination of a true scientist, Mark starts to think about how he could signal NASA. He knows that if he can move to a point where communication is possible, he might have a chance to return home. Hope becomes his fuel as he prepares to face what lies ahead. While Mark Watney struggles for survival on Mars, the situation on Earth becomes increasingly critical. After the sandstorm, the members of the Ares 3 crew, who had already departed, are informed of the possibility that Mark might still be alive. NASA, analyzing the mission data, realizes that Mark's life signal had not been completely lost. At NASA's control center, scientists and engineers study the mission logs. During a detailed analysis of the images and data collected, one of the technicians, Annie Montrose, notices a series of video posts that Mark made in his personal diary. Although the situation seems desperate, the recordings reveal that he is alive and able to produce food. The news that Mark is alive spreads quickly throughout NASA. The mission director, Vincent Kapoor, calls for an emergency meeting. Scientists, engineers, and specialists gather to discuss how they could rescue Mark. The team works at record speed, reviewing the communication systems and looking for ways to establish contact. Meanwhile, the members of Ares 3, led by Melissa Lewis, face a whirlwind of emotions. Melissa, in particular, feels responsible for Mark's safety. Along with her colleagues, she revisits the moments of the mission, recalling how the storm forced them to evacuate quickly. They failed to realize that Mark was still alive. Guilt consumes her, and she vows to do everything she can to assist in the rescue mission. NASA's team develops a bold plan. They decide to use the Ares 4 spacecraft, which was scheduled for a different mission, to reach Mars and rescue Mark. The challenge is immense. The journey requires meticulous planning, and resources are scarce. Nevertheless, the hope of saving Mark drives everyone involved. With the help of a group of engineers, NASA manages to re-establish rudimentary communication with Mark, transmitting messages via a probe. The joy of hearing Mark's voice again is palpable, but it also brings to light the reality of his situation. He informs them about his conditions and the challenges he faces daily. Meanwhile, Mark continues to document his experiences in his diary, sharing his thoughts and feelings. He speaks of loneliness, but also expresses gratitude for the chance to live each day. His notes become a source of inspiration not only for him, but also for the NASA team, which is dedicated to bringing Mark back home. After the discovery that Mark Watney is still alive on Mars, NASA quickly mobilizes. NASA Director Teddy Sanders calls an emergency meeting with the agency's top scientists and engineers. Everyone is aware of the gravity of the situation. Watney may not have much time before his supplies run out. The engineers begin to devise a bold plan to rescue Mark. The challenge is immense. They need to develop a new mission that can take them to Mars and bring him back to Earth. The team proposes to use the Ares 4 spacecraft, which was scheduled for a future mission, but will be expedited to assist in the rescue. Meanwhile, the Ares 3 crew gathers to discuss what has happened. Melissa Lewis, the commander, feels guilty for not realizing Mark was alive. She and the other team members, Rick Martinez, Becker, and Johansson, decide to do everything they can to help with the rescue, even if it means risking their own lives. NASA begins working day and night, designing new equipment and adapting the Ares 4 for the mission. Systems engineer Mindy Park discovers that communication with Watney is possible and starts sending messages to him. To boost hope, she relays information about the progress of the rescue plan. Meanwhile, Mark faces new challenges on Mars. Growing potatoes in a hostile environment becomes increasingly complicated. He needs to improvise to ensure the plants receive enough water and nutrients. In a moment of despair, Mark remembers the importance of keeping morale high and decides to make a transmission to NASA, even without a direct response. He talks about his experiences, his struggles, and the hope that they will rescue him. The astronauts of Ares 3, still in orbit, are informed about the rescue plan and the difficulties the NASA team faces. The decision to join the mission is not easy, and each of them reflects on the risks involved. However, the determination to save Mark unites them. They devise a strategy that involves intercepting Ares 4 as soon as it arrives at Mars. The team mentally prepares for the journey, reliving their memories of the previous mission and recalling the bonds they formed. The camaraderie among them strengthens, and each begins to understand that this mission is not just about rescuing a colleague, but also about the fight for survival and the strength of the human spirit. Finally, the day of departure arrives. Ares 4 is launched with an air of anticipation and urgency. The mission controllers on Earth watch with bated breath, while the Ares 3 crew prepares for the interception. What follows is a combination of tension, hope, and the desire to see Mark again as everyone heads into the unknown. After weeks of tension and uncertainty, the rescue mission finally arrives on Mars. The team, led by Melissa Lewis, is filled with anticipation and anxiety. The plan is risky, but their determination to save Mark Watney propels them forward. They have only a limited window of time to complete the mission, and every second counts. Meanwhile, Mark, who has faced extreme challenges, is in a remote location, prepared for the encounter. He has adapted to life on Mars in unimaginable ways, but loneliness and despair are knocking at his door. Each day, he revisits his memories of Earth, searching for motivation to continue. Communication between the NASA team and the astronauts on Mars is constant. The team discusses the final details of the plan, and the engineers on Earth monitor every movement. Mark, for his part, is working on his own survival plan, keeping his spirits high with humor and creativity. Finally, the moment of reunion arrives. The tension is palpable as the rescue ship approaches. Mark, upon seeing the ship, feels a wave of hope and emotion. He prepares for ascent and simultaneously reflects on the journey he has traveled. The fear of the unknown mingles with the joy of seeing familiar faces again. When the ship lands, the astronauts come together, and the embrace between Mark and his companions is filled with relief and joy. They celebrate their victory over adversity, not just as co-workers, but as a family united by shared experience. The story ends with Mark returning to Earth, where he is welcomed as a hero. He reflects on the fragility of life and the strength of human connection, understanding that even amid the solitude of space, hope and solidarity are what keep us alive. The human spirit is unbreakable, and the experience on Mars becomes a beacon of inspiration for everyone on Earth.